Have you ever planted carrots, waited 2 full weeks, and still saw nothing but bare soil? No tiny green threads, no little rows, no sign of life at all. Just a smooth, empty bed that makes you wonder if you actually planted anything in the first place. And then the questions start. Were the seeds too old? Did I plant them too deep, too shallow? Did the bed dry out? Did I wash the seeds away? Did the birds get them? Did ants carry them off? Or maybe carrots just do not like my garden. If that sounds familiar, do not rush to replant, because this is exactly where a lot of gardeners make the mistake that ruins the whole bed. They rake it, they dig around, they add more seed on top. They start watering every day like they are putting out a fire, and by trying to fix the problem, they make it worse. Most of the time, carrots do not fail because the seeds are bad, and they do not fail because you are bad at gardening. Very often, the real problem is much simpler. The top inch of soil dried out before the seeds had a fair chance to sprout. Today, I want to show you one of the simplest tricks I have ever used for better carrot germination. It costs almost nothing. It looks a little silly, and the first time I saw it, I honestly did not think it would work. It is just wet newspaper laid over the carrot bed. That is it. But that wet newspaper once saved my carrot planting, and I have used the idea ever since. Now, let me be clear. Newspaper is not magic. It will not turn dead seed into good seed. It will not fix hard clay, fresh manure, or a badly prepared bed. What it does is much more practical. It holds moisture exactly where carrot seeds need it most, right at the surface. And with carrots, that can make all the difference. For several years, I had the same problem with carrots every spring. I would prepare the bed, make the rows, sow the seeds, cover them lightly, water everything in, and walk away feeling pretty confident. The soil was loose. The weather felt right. I had fresh seed, at least I thought I did. I would tell myself, this is the year. This is the year I finally get a nice stand of carrots. Then 1 week passed. Nothing. 10 days passed. Still nothing. 2 weeks passed. The bed looked completely empty. Every morning I would go out and stare at that soil like something might magically appear if I looked hard enough. Here and there I would see a tiny bit of green, but it was usually a weed. Sometimes the soil would crack a little, and I would think, here they come. But no, still nothing. Meanwhile, everything else in the garden was moving along. Radishes were already up. Lettuce was coming in. Dill was showing. Spinach looked fine. And my carrot bed looked like I had just dragged a hoe through it and pretended to plant something. That is when doubt takes over. Maybe the seeds were too old. Maybe the variety was wrong for my area. Maybe the soil was too heavy. Maybe I buried them too deep. Maybe I should have soaked them first. Maybe I should have fertilized more. After a few more days, I would lose patience. I would rake the bed and plant again. Then I would wait again. And when the carrots finally came up, they came up in patches. Thick in one spot, empty in another, a blank space right through the middle. By fall, I was not pulling beautiful carrots. I was pulling thin little roots, crooked roots, forked roots, and a lot of tops with not much underneath. They were fine for soup. I could chop them up and use them, but they were not the kind of carrots you store for winter, juice, roast whole, or pull in pretty bunches. I tried different varieties. I bought more expensive seed. I tried pelleted seed. I changed beds. I added compost. But the same thing kept happening. Slow germination, uneven rows, weak plants. Then, one spring, after another failed-looking carrot bed, I mentioned it to an older gardener I knew. He had one of those gardens that always looked like it belonged in a magazine. Strong tomato plants, cucumbers by the bucket, straight onions, and carrots that looked like they came from a farmer's market. He walked over, looked at my empty carrot bed, and did not say much. Then he went back to his shed. I figured he had decided my garden was hopeless. A minute later, he came back with a stack of old newspapers and a bucket of water. He laid the newspapers right over the bed, soaked them well, weighed down the edges with boards, and said, "Now leave it alone. Just keep the paper damp. Check under it in a few days." I will be honest. It looked strange. A vegetable bed covered in wet newspaper is not exactly a high-tech gardening method. But I had nothing to lose. So I watered right over the newspaper whenever it started to dry. A few days later, I carefully lifted one corner. Underneath, I saw tiny white threads. Not one or two, a lot of them, right where the carrot rows were. They were pale because they had been under cover, but they were alive. I removed the newspaper in the evening, gave the bed a gentle watering, and within a couple of days, those pale little threads turned green. The carrots came up in a clean, even stand. That was when I understood what had been going wrong. The problem was not the seed. The problem was moisture. Carrots are slow starters. They have small seeds, and those seeds have natural oils that can slow down water absorption. That is one reason carrots usually do not pop up in 3 or 4 days like radishes. In good conditions, with warm enough soil and steady moisture, carrots may show up in about 10 to 14 days. If the weather is cool, if the soil keeps drying out, or if the seed is older, it can take closer to 3 weeks. And that is where the trouble begins. Carrots are planted shallow, usually about a ½ inch deep, sometimes a little deeper in sandy soil, and a little shallower in heavier soil. That means the seeds are sitting very close to the surface. Now, think about what happens in a typical American spring garden. You water in the morning, and everything looks perfect. Then the sun comes out. A breeze picks up. By evening, the top layer of soil is dry again. The next day, the same thing happens. Sun, wind, dry surface. And if you live in a dry climate, like parts of the West, the High Plains, or the Southwest, that top layer can dry out very fast. If you garden in the South, you may have the opposite problem at certain times of year. Warm soil can help seeds sprout, but hot sun can bake the surface and make it crusty. In the Northeast or Midwest, a cool wet spell can slow carrots down, and then a few windy, sunny days can dry the surface just when the seeds are waking up. Every region has its own version of the same problem. Carrot seeds need steady moisture while they germinate. Not mud, not standing water, but steady moisture. A seed may start to swell. The seed coat softens. The little root begins to wake up. Then the top of the bed dries out. That tiny sprout can die before you ever see it above ground. You look at the bed and think, nothing germinated. But really, some of the seeds started and then failed because the surface dried out at the worst possible moment. There is another problem too: soil crust. After a hard rain or heavy watering, the surface can dry into a firm crust, especially if you have clay soil or fine, silty soil. A bean or pea seedling can often push through that. A carrot seedling is tiny and delicate. It does not have much strength. So the seed needs moisture, but the surface also has to stay soft enough for that little sprout to break through. That is why the newspaper trick works so well. It does not force carrots to grow faster. It simply creates better conditions. The newspaper works like a temporary mulch. First, it slows evaporation. The soil underneath stays damp longer, especially in that shallow layer where the carrot seeds are sitting. Second, it softens the watering. When you water over bare soil, especially with a strong stream, you can wash seeds around or beat the surface into a crust. When you water over newspaper, the water passes through more gently. Third, it blocks wind. Wind pulls moisture out of the top of a bed faster than many people realize. Fourth, it helps even out temperature swings. The soil underneath does not heat up quite as sharply during the day, and it does not cool quite as quickly at night. And fifth, it gives shade. Carrot seeds do not need light to germinate. They need moisture, air, and the right temperature. Now, you might be wondering, why not use plastic? Plastic can hold moisture, but it can also cause problems. Clear plastic can heat the soil very quickly on a sunny day. In warm regions, or during a sudden hot spell, it can get too hot under there. Plastic also does not breathe the way paper or fabric does. If you are home every day and you can open it, vent it, and watch the temperature, plastic can be used carefully. But if you only get out to the garden after work or on weekends, plastic is risky. What about row cover? Lightweight row cover works very well. It lets in air and water, protects from wind, and slows drying. If you already have it, use it. I am not saying newspaper is better than row cover. I am saying newspaper is cheap, simple, and easy to use as a short-term cover until the carrots sprout. And if you do not get a newspaper anymore, you can use plain, uncoated paper. A brown paper grocery bag cut open can work. Plain packing paper can work. Just avoid glossy magazine pages, shiny advertisements, coated paper, or anything with a slick surface. Glossy paper does not breathe or absorb water the same way, and it is not what you want on a vegetable bed. The best choice is plain newsprint or plain uncoated paper. Now let us walk through the method. First, prepare the bed well. This matters. Newspaper will help with moisture, but it will not fix a bad bed. Carrots grow best in loose, deep soil without rocks, hard clumps, or fresh manure. The root wants to grow straight down. If it hits a stone, a chunk of clay, a hard lump of compost, or a piece of rough organic matter, it may fork or twist around it. That is how you end up with carrots that look like little orange hands. So take the time to loosen the soil. If you grow in raised beds, this is usually easier. If you grow in native ground and your soil is heavy clay, loosen it deeply and mix in finished compost over time. Do not add fresh manure right before planting carrots. That is a common mistake. It seems logical. Feed the soil more, get bigger carrots. But fresh manure can give you lots of leafy tops and rough, forked roots. It can also make carrots store poorly. If you want to improve the bed with organic matter, use finished compost or add manure months earlier before another crop. The top of the bed should be fine, crumbly, and level. Second, plant at the right depth. Do not bury carrot seed too deep. A shallow furrow is enough. In many garden soils, about a ½ inch is good. In loose, sandy soil, you can go a little deeper so the seed stays moist. In heavier soil, keep it shallower. I like to make the furrows with the edge of a board, a stick, or the handle of a tool. I press a straight line into the soil instead of digging a deep trench. That gives me a neat, shallow row. Third, water before you sow. A lot of people plant the seed, cover it, and then water from above. That can work, but it can also move the seed around or seal the surface. Here's what I prefer. Make the shallow rows first. Water the rows with a gentle shower from a watering can or hose wand. Let the water soak in. Then sow the carrot seed onto that moist soil. After that, cover the seed with a light material. You can use fine garden soil, screened compost, a little peat-free seed starting mix, or fine sand mixed with compost. Keep the covering thin and loose. Then, press the surface gently with your hand or a board. Do not pack it hard. Just firm it enough so the seed has contact with the damp soil. Fourth, lay down the newspaper. Take plain newspaper and spread it over the seeded area. Use 2 or 3 layers. One layer can dry too fast and tear. Too many layers can block too much air and water. 2 or 3 layers are usually enough. Cover the whole seeded section. Try not to leave gaps over the rows. Then, soak the paper thoroughly. It should get wet enough to cling to the soil. Wet newspaper stays in place better and starts working right away. Weigh down the edges with boards, stones, bricks, or anything handy. You do not need to cover the whole bed with heavy objects. Just hold the edges and a few spots in the middle so the wind does not lift it. That is the main work. After that, your job is simple. Do not let the newspaper dry out completely. In dry weather, water right over the paper. You do not need to remove it to water. The water will soak through and keep the soil underneath moist. If you get regular rain, you may not need to water much at all. Just check that the paper is still in place and is not dried into a stiff sheet. Now comes the most important part. When do you remove the newspaper? This is where people can make a mistake. The newspaper is only for germination. It is not meant to stay on after the carrots are up. Once the seedlings appear, they need light. Usually, I start checking after about 5 to 7 days, depending on the weather. Do not pull the whole thing off at once. Just lift a corner carefully and look underneath. If the soil is still bare, lay it back down and keep it damp. If the weather has been cool, carrots may take longer. Do not panic. Carrots are slow. But once you see tiny white or pale green threads, it is time to remove the cover. The best time to do this is in the evening or on a cloudy day. Why not at noon on a hot sunny day? Because those little seedlings have been sitting in damp shade. They are tender. If you suddenly expose them to strong sun and heat, they can wilt or get stressed. Remove the paper in the evening, give the bed a gentle watering if needed, and let the seedlings adjust overnight. In a day or two, they will green up and start growing normally. Now let us talk about seed. Carrot seed does not stay strong forever. If a packet has been sitting in a hot garage or shed for several years, germination may be poor. Fresh seed gives you a much better chance. You can also soak carrot seed before planting. The easiest, safe method is to soak it in warm water for several hours or overnight. Then drain it. Let it dry just enough so it is easier to handle, and plant it right away. Do not leave carrot seed wet for days without air, and do not wait until every seed has a long little root unless you are ready to handle it very carefully. Sprouted carrot seed is easy to damage. Some gardeners use a method called bubbling or aerating. That means putting the seed in water and using a small aquarium pump to keep air moving through it. The moving water and oxygen can help the seed hydrate more evenly. Usually 12 to 18 hours is enough. Then the seed is dried to a plantable texture and sown right away. You do not have to do that. It is just an option. For most home gardeners, fresh seed, good soil contact, and steady moisture are the big things. Now, another carrot problem is spacing. Carrot seed is tiny. If you pour it straight from the packet, you almost always end up with too much seed in some places and bare spots in others. One simple trick is to mix the seed with dry sand. For example, mix a small amount of carrot seed into a cup of dry sand, stir it well, and sprinkle that mixture along the row. The sand helps spread the seed more evenly. Seed tapes are another option. You can buy them, or you can make your own with thin toilet paper and a simple flour and water paste. Put tiny dots of paste every couple of inches. Place one seed on each dot, let the strip dry, and store it until planting. Is it a little fussy? Yes, but it can save a lot of thinning later. If you planted normally and the carrots come up too thick, you will need to thin them. And I know this is the hard part. You wait 2 weeks for every tiny green thread, celebrate when they finally show up, and then someone tells you to pull half of them out. But if you do not thin carrots, you will not get good roots. They need space. If they are crowded, they stay skinny, twist around each other, and never size up properly. I like to thin in 2 stages. The first time is when the seedlings have their first true leaves. At that point, remove the worst crowding and leave a little space between plants. Later, when the tops are bigger and you can see which plants are strongest, thin again. For most main crop carrots, leave about 2 to 3 inches between plants. For smaller early carrots, you can leave them a little closer. For large storage varieties, give them more room. Thin after rain or after watering when the soil is moist. The extra seedlings come out more easily and you disturb the remaining roots less. Also, do not leave pulled carrot seedlings lying on the bed. The smell of bruised carrot foliage can attract carrot rust fly in areas where that pest is a problem. Take the thinnings away from the bed. Put them in a covered compost system or dispose of them away from the carrot patch. After thinning, water gently. When you pull out extra plants, the soil around the remaining seedlings can loosen a little. A light watering settles the soil back around the roots. Now let us talk about watering after the carrots are up. There is no perfect rule like water every 4 days. That is not how gardens work. Sandy soil dries quickly. Clay soil holds moisture longer. A raised bed may dry faster than an in-ground bed. A garden in Arizona is not the same as a garden in Michigan. A spring carrot crop in Oregon is not the same as a fall carrot crop in Georgia. So do not water by the calendar. Check the soil. Carrots do not like drying out, especially when they are young and later when the roots are sizing up. But they also do not want to sit in soggy soil. The goal is even moisture, not dust dry, not swampy. Even. Once the carrots are established, it is usually better to water more deeply and less often than to sprinkle the surface every day. You want moisture to move down into the root zone. That encourages straighter, deeper growth. The worst pattern is to let the bed get bone dry and then flood it. After big swings like that, carrot roots can crack. So keep the moisture as steady as you can. A light mulch can help after the seedlings are established, but do not bury tiny carrot seedlings under heavy mulch too early. Wait until they are strong enough. Now, let us talk about feeding. Carrots do not need a lot of nitrogen. Too much nitrogen can give you beautiful green tops and disappointing roots. The carrots may turn rough, hairy, forked, or poor for storage. If your bed was prepared with finished compost, carrots often do fine without much extra fertilizer. If your soil is poor, use a balanced organic fertilizer lightly, or choose one that is not overly high in nitrogen. Potassium and phosphorus support root development, but more is not always better. Some gardeners use wood ash, but be careful with it. Wood ash raises soil pH, and in many parts of the country, especially where soils are already alkaline, that can cause problems. If you are not sure what your soil needs, a basic soil test through your local extension office is worth it. Now, pests. In some parts of the United States, carrot rust fly can be a real issue. The larvae damage the roots and leave dark tunnels. The carrots may taste bad and store poorly. Planting onions nearby may help confuse pests a little, but it is not a complete solution. Better protection comes from combining a few habits. Do not overcrowd the bed. Thin in the evening or on a cloudy day. Remove thinnings right away. Rotate your carrot bed from year to year. Clean up plant debris. And if carrot rust fly is a regular problem in your area, cover the bed with insect netting or lightweight row cover after the seedlings are up. The cover has to be sealed at the edges because the goal is to keep the adult fly from reaching the plants. Now let us put the whole method together in a simple way. Prepare a loose, clean bed without rocks, hard clumps, or fresh manure. Make shallow rows. Water the rows before planting and let the water soak in. Sow the carrot seed as evenly as you can. Cover lightly with fine soil, screened compost, or another loose material. Press the surface gently so the seed touches the moist soil. Cover the bed with 2 or 3 layers of plain newspaper. Soak the newspaper well. Hold the edges down so the wind does not lift it. Keep the newspaper damp. Start checking under it after several days. As soon as you see the first tiny carrot sprouts, remove the newspaper in the evening or on a cloudy day. That is the whole trick. No expensive product, no complicated system, no miracle spray. You are simply giving carrot seeds what they usually need most at the beginning: steady moisture in the top layer of soil. That is why this method works so well in beds where carrots usually come up in patches. The newspaper does not do the growing for you. It just helps the seeds survive the most fragile stage, from planting to emergence. After that, the regular care still matters. Thin the seedlings, water evenly, keep the soil loose. Avoid too much nitrogen. Protect the crop from pests if they are common where you live. And remember, timing matters too. In northern states, carrots are often planted in spring as soon as the soil can be worked, and again in late summer for a fall crop. In hot southern areas, carrots often do better in fall, winter, or very early spring, because summer soil can be too hot for good germination and sweet roots. In dry climates, you may need to check the paper often so it never fully dries out. In humid climates, you still need airflow, so remove the paper as soon as the seedlings appear. The basic idea stays the same, but the timing changes with your region. So, if your carrots come up poorly year after year, do not immediately blame the seed, the soil, or yourself. This season, try covering the bed with wet newspaper until the seedlings appear. Keep that top layer evenly moist. Then, remove the cover at the right time. Sometimes, the secret to a good stand of carrots is not an expensive tool or a fancy fertilizer. Sometimes, it is just protecting one simple thing at the right moment: moisture.